I'm more of a still photographer.
I'm Janette Barber, and I have been around comedy. I think I've always been around comedy. It's always been part of my life because it's part of who I am, and I ended up being able to work in it. I have 6 Emmys, well, as I like to say, 6 Emmys so far, and best-selling author. I was a stand-up comic, a TV producer, a writer, a radio host, and somehow comedy always sort of becomes part of that. And then I can't even tell you how many years ago I was at an event, and sitting next to me is this woman, Sarah Elizabeth Greer. And I met her, and she sort of filled the room. She's gigantic, just a gigantic personality. And she also was very funny, and we had the one thing, a seminal thing in common. She doesn't have a mother. I don't have a mother. Of course we had them. She was adopted. I was not. But to actually, that seminal thing of motherlessness that then becomes into your art. Motherlessness that makes you who you are. Motherlessness, is it something that we're going to regret, or is it going to later become a gift? I think it all depends on what you do with it. And Sarah very consciously wanted her adoption and her whole journey to be part of her art. And I resonated with this so incredibly strongly. I think that there's something incredibly different about all of us who don't have mothers. It is that early abandonment will lead you to abandon yourself over and over and over and over again, unless or until you do something with it. Now, there's one way to look at it, which is the value of sharing your story to other people. One thing I always say, I read one time, if you take a drop of a pond and look in that drop under a microscope, you will see the entire pond in microcosm, right? So I think if you take one human being, and if that one human being completely exposes their soul, you get to see all of humanity. And I think that's the value in this show, because that's what humanity is. There's a rawness, there is a deep ache in every single person who goes through this. And we are legion, we are millions. And yet it's swept under the carpet, and people aren't really thinking about what that means. So I think when you take that art and you can answer the pain, and you can find something to put in the whole of millions, and what better way to do it than a comedy? Because when you can laugh at something, you take away its power. When you can laugh at pain, you anesthetize that pain, and you can look at that pain in a completely new way. And here's a way to think of it, although it's a little bit odd. But when you are left by your mother or by your parents, but when you're abandoned as a child, that's a pain and a wound that is so incredibly deep that you are scarred. You can't see those scars, but you are scarred from this. Well, I had an experience years ago, a few years ago, where I was in Ukraine working with a group, Medical Missions for Children, in a hospital, and the babies were burned. Seems like I've gone a long way, but I haven't. If you take an infant, a baby, and it's burned over 90% of its body, that baby is biologically programmed to grow. But with all of that scar tissue, it can't. So as that biological imperative comes in, the body will twist, it will deform in pain because it can't grow. Well, those are scars that we can see because they're burns. But in the kind of pain you have from the loss of a parent or traumatic event when you're a child, you're still covered with scars. If you can't find a way to resolve those scars, you will not be able to grow. And yet, your sole imperative is that you must grow, and that's what causes all of that pain. In the physical realm, there are techniques, tissue expansion and vascular flap. But of tissue expansion, you can stretch what little skin, that 10% that's left, and you stretch it and you stretch it, and you work with the healthy part until eventually it becomes so big that it overcomes the scar tissue. That's what art can do for emotional pain. That's what art can do for psychic pain. And I think that there is an imperative. I don't think Sarah Elizabeth Greer has a choice, actually. I think she has an imperative to explore the pain that she was gifted as a child, to explore it for her own self-development. But for me, when I'm watching it, I bring that into my development, into my own self-development of recovering from that pain or experiencing life through that pain, however you want to look at it. So I think that art is, because people, what is art? What is art? Is it a room full of dirt because somebody called it art? Well, possibly it is. It's anything that is expressing something that is so deep it cannot be expressed in a sentence. It's deep, it's in there, and it must come out. And that's what I see in this show. And I think that we live in a world in pain. I think all you have to do, open up the paper, look at the newspaper, and look at what people are doing, and what you're seeing there is not a bunch of evil people. What you're seeing is a bunch of people in pain. If we can't address the essence of human suffering, we are in trouble as a planet. And you can only address it one person at a time and one pain at a time. There is no let's solve it. There is let's solve it for this person and that child and that man and that woman. You can only do it one person at a time. And I believe that's what Sarah is trying to do here. She is trying to address it herself. She is trying to express her own drop of pond water. And by doing it and by facing that pain and by going through that journey, we all get to go through it with her. When I watched the play the first time and I saw, first of all, it's hysterically funny. Her physicality, I'm amazed by what this woman actually does on stage. But it opened up something. It opened up emotion. I myself, from my experience of scarring, I'm not open. I don't feel emotion and express emotion and fill a room with emotion. And when I'm in the room and watching Sarah Elizabeth Greer on stage, all of a sudden little things like, boo, 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 boo. It's like all of a sudden somebody's unbuttoning something. And it's like, I didn't even, first of all, I didn't know it was an outfit. So I didn't know you could unbutton me. But here I am sitting in a theater and I am becoming unbuttoned. There is tremendous value in being unbuttoned by art. Tremendous value. Sometimes that's all we can do for the world. Guidance?
Wow!